Hey guys, welcome to my channel, Moving Pictures. Today I am at Citadel Hill. It's located downtown Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. It was originally built as a fort to protect this city of Halifax back in the 1700s. So after 300 years and many renovations and upkeep, we're here to check it out today and take a look around. So yeah, let's go check it out. Looks like they're doing some artwork here, painting some artwork on the side. Pretty neat. Very cool.
So now Corporal Guard brings out the relief sentry and is going to march out, take over the sentry. So the sentry has to face towards the tunnel in order to make room for the next sentry to take over.
Take charge of all government property within range of this post. All persons of respectable appearance may be admitted without a pass by recording their name in the visitor's book. Pay compliments to all officers of the Army and Navy according to their rank.
Please, Henry, your front is to the east, and your reading stands 15 paces to your proper rear.
这个送饭的，两个人被抢就把我们这样把人看到。Picture of all government property within this post in person of responsible, respectable appearance,
Hey, morning.
Soldiers are fighting in lines and they're using muskets. So muskets are weapons that you actually load from the muzzle or from the top. So kind of like you'd see, in the American Revolution. And so with that, you're also wearing a bright red jacket with a big, essentially, X marks the spot through your chest. Because up until this point, weapons are, one, they're horribly unreliable. So if you actually fired it, chances are it may not actually go off. But they're also very inaccurate. So these are smoothbore weapons. So essentially it's just a barrel and you're sending a ball flying down that barrel. As it goes down the barrel, it's bouncing around. And once it leaves, it can pretty much go wherever it likes. So the idea of a curveball in baseball also applies to musket balls. And so sometimes they'll veer off randomly. And so with that, the way you would fight a war is by, you get a whole bunch of soldiers all stand in a line together and take turns shooting. So the idea being, if you all fire together, you're just sending a big wall of lead downrange, and chances are it's going to hit something. But by the 1860s and 70s, that's starting to change with the introduction of new types of guns, such as this. So this is a rifle. What that means is it has little grooves on the inside of the barrel that make the bullet spin. So with the introduction of this, you're starting to see a more conical shaped bullet. So when you fire it, that bullet spins. So it's the same idea as the difference between throwing a soccer ball and throwing an American football. American football travels a much greater distance, and because of that spin and its shape. So the same thing again applies to weapons. On top of that, you start to see the design of a new type of rifle. So this is a Snider Enfield, and this is the first mass-produced and mass-issued rifle issued to British soldiers that had a breech. What that means is a breech is a little door at the back of the gun where you're able to actually load a single prepackaged cartridge and fire. So you're skipping the whole time-consuming ramming process. So an experienced soldier could fire a musket about once every 20 or 30 seconds, but to fire one of these you can get a round off in under 5. And so with that, it's also far more accurate and the bullet can travel a much greater distance. And so with this, every time you pull the trigger, you're pretty much hitting what you're aiming at almost every time. And so with that, by the end of the 19th century, you start to see casualty counts, or the number of deaths in battle, skyrocket because you're using new types of weapons, but you're using the same old tactics. And so that's why conflicts like the American Civil War have such a high death rate, because again, you're using modern weapons with old ways of fighting. So he's going to fire that thing 3 times. Now, it is quite loud. If you want to plug your ears, best time to do that will be essentially when he brings the rifle up to his shoulder and cracks his head towards that wall. But hearing it 3 times won't hurt your hearing, I can assure you. However, if you're going to do it, just plug your ears. Essentially, the gun fires pre-packaged brass top. And so these rounds would have been dropped in a battle. They would have actually been then collected afterwards by drummer boys, where the army would have then washed them, filed down the end, and actually reused them again. So all you have to do is wash them, file them down, remove the primer, add a new primer, and then pack it with. So this is one of the rounds that was used. So it fires a .577 caliber round. So that's a pretty massive round. Essentially, if it hits you with it, if it hits your arm, you're losing the arm. If it hits you in the torso, you're pretty much done for. So the recoil on one of those things, if you were to actually fire a live round, would be like something like firing an actual a big shot. So you could kick it into the shoulder. So the best modern equivalent would be a 24 gauge shotgun shell. So like I said, there's a little primer here at the back of the little silver thing. So you can see it's been fired because it's got a hole in it. But so all you have to do is you pump it out, put a new one in, clean the round, reload it, and you can use it again and again. Now this round was originally actually a bit taller, but like I said, you're able to file it down and continue using it, so it makes these quite work. So essentially, it turns your rifle into a giant spear. And so, if say you've extinguished all your rounds, or you're just too close quarters, you charge. All right. Yeah, if there's no more questions, we will keep going. So follow me over there. Right, so welcome to the defensive ditch. So I'm going to kind of cover how this fort would have defended itself in the event of an attack. So essentially you've got 3 main layers of defense against a land-based invasion. So, like I said, armies coming over land, or say an invasion fleet has just stopped off somewhere above the coast and just dropped everybody off and they've come over land instead. So the first layer of defense is cannons. So you can't really see any down here, but up on the wall there would have been, and on the other side of the fort, there would have been huge, essentially massive cannons, and there would have been lots of them. And so these guns extended to essentially 32 pounders, and then by the Victorian era you're starting to get, to 200 pounders. But these guns were massive, and they were much, much larger than any moving or mobile army could ever drag behind them. So the largest caliber of gun that an army could really carry behind it was essentially a 6-pounder. So it was firing a small 6-pound ball that was only really effective against troops. And so, as the army is approaching, they're going to be, miles. It's going to take them miles before they're ever going to come into range of the Citadel. But the Citadel's guns will be able to fire at them well before they're able to fire at us. So even as the army is moving towards Halifax, they're going to be getting pounded by all the guns on top of here. And so also by the Victorian era, you're starting to see the introduction of explosive shells. So shells that produce shrapnel that can devastate an army on the move. Now, as you get even closer, you start to come into range of men with small arms, so muskets, other rifles and such. But the idea being is, if you're actually going to take the Citadel, you're not just going to go running up the hill and march in immediately. That would be suicide. So the idea is you're going to stop and you're going to dig in. You're going to dig a series of trenches extending all the way up the hill. So essentially you're under cover of from fire coming down from the walls, and you're able to move. However, the British thought of that too. So the entire Citadel Hill was mined. It had large underground mines, so not like a landmine where you step on it and it goes off. These were mines that had to be remotely detonated. But you'd then activate the mine, and the British would rather have had no hill than an enemy dug into the hill. So they would have let them dig in, get comfortable, and then blown it sky high. Now, assuming you managed to get past all of that, and that, keep in mind, by the way, you're spending as much time harassing the enemy just to wait for the British fleet, the largest naval fleet in the world, to show up. They finally get here and they find this. So this is the defensive ditch, and it's the final massive layer of defense. So it goes all the way around the citadel, and this is the back side of the fort, so it's actually not as high. But on the other side, the walls are even higher, and so falling in, you'd likely break a leg, if not worse, and you'd be stuck down here. And so once you were down here in this ditch, obviously the door we came through would have been shut and locked, and no one's letting you in. You would have then been fired at and shot at from every single angle. So behind me, you'll see there are lots of little slits in the wall, and all those slits extend down there as well. So that's called the musketry gallery. And so you can go in there. We won't, just because the tour is a little bit too big. But if you'd like to come in your own time and have a look, you can. And it goes all the way down there. You would have been locked in there, and you would have been able to shoot at any soldiers you saw down here. On top of that, you'd be fired at from the two larger slits behind me. So those would have had cannons, and those cannons would have been firing something called grape shot. Now, grape shot essentially transforms a cannon, so rather than firing a single ball, it turns it into a shotgun, where it's firing lots of little musket balls. And so one of those would fire, and it would absolutely shred anybody that was down here. And so, it would have been an absolute bloodbath to be here in the event of an attack. Now, on top of that, you can see that the gun ports are angled. So the only way you can actually fire into them is by standing directly in front. So if you're off to the left or off to the right, you won't be able to fire a direct shot in. However, if you're standing in front of them, they can fire it to you as well. And you'll also notice that they're angled so that they're firing down each of the ditches, and so there are no blind spots. And that's why this fort has such an interesting star shape, and it's because there are no blind spots. There are constant overlapping angles of fire. So this is a Vauban style fort. So Vauban was a French architect. So essentially, the English and French just stole everything from each other for a while. But it had three separate architects because it took so long. I said at the beginning it took 30 years, so they just kept getting fired. The only way in would have been through a sally port like this, and so the only realistic way to actually take a fort like this would have been through a siege. And so essentially a siege, you're surrounding the fort and you're just going to starve them out. Also, this fort was siege-proof, so there's a massive underground water system for fresh water, and would have had ample supplies to last out a siege. So, long story short, you just couldn't attack Halifax, and so for that reason, no enemy has ever attacked Halifax. So we're now essentially at the front of the fort. And so this, as you might be able to tell, this area, or this side of the fort, is about twice as thick as the other side. And so this is because this is the land-facing side of the fort. So nowadays there's a lot more stuff on the ocean-facing side, just because it's a nice view and there's more to do. But back in the day, there would have been a cannon about every 6 feet facing that way. And 1/3 of all the guns in the entire city would have actually been on this wall. So a massive number of cannons. And so this would have been a hive of activity in the event of an invasion. And so back in the day, nowadays we have a city on the other side of us, but historically it would have mostly just been farmland with a few sporadic houses. And so it was a perfect location to defend against an attack because you could see an invading army for miles. You'd be able to shoot at them, like I said before, for miles before they were able to actually shoot at you. And so this is a natural hill. It wasn't built up. The British actually built it down. But again, when the harbour was first essentially discovered by the British, the British officers said this is the finest harbour we've ever seen. And so this hill being a part of that, making it very, very easily defended. So, welcome to the signal post. This is one of those visible areas of the fort. You can see it well outside the city. And so these are the two fort's primary communication masts. So what that means is, the smaller one was designed for secret military communications. So every other military base and other fort in the area would have had a mast exactly the same as that. And there was actually a line of them extending way out the mouth of the harbour. There was also a line of them extending as far as Fredericton in New Brunswick. Now, with this mast, you were able to actually raise a series of balls and raise them up to the top of the mast. And so, depending on the height you put them at, that number those balls correlate to a certain number. That number is then taken and put into a cipher or a code book where you can then decipher it, and it then translates to an order. Now, using this system as well as a series of flags on top, you could transmit more than 400 individual messages. And these were fairly complicated messages. You could say something such as, the ship west of here is currently sinking, send help now. And that was just with one single message, or sorry, one single thing. So you could then take down the balls and send up a different message. So this was highly advanced, and it actually only really existed here in the Maritimes. And it was the brainchild of Edward, the Duke of Kent, who was he was a prince and became king at one point, and he visited here in early 19th century. Then the second mast is considerably larger, and that partly had a military purpose, but it was mostly for communicating with the people of Halifax. So when a ship came into Halifax, that was a fairly big deal. Ships brought everything from food, people, supplies, you name it, it all came by ship. And so you had a team of spotters, like I said, that extended out the mouth of the harbour, but they spent their time essentially looking for things to do, because there was no invasion that ever happened, and so there was obviously no fleet that they could spot. And so they were given a task, and it was to relay back when a merchant or a commercial vessel was coming into Halifax. And so when that vessel was coming in, you could relay back that vessel, and then that vessel would actually be flying the flag of the company that owned it. So the same way nowadays a company has a logo, ships back then, or shipping companies back then had a flag that you'd fly. And so you'd relay back, you could then hoist the flag of the company that owned the ship, which it's doing now, along with a series of pennants and discs indicating the direction in which the ship is coming, the type of ship, and actually how soon it was coming to Halifax. So you might be able to see there's a little disc on the other end of the lower yardarm. And so essentially, if it's on the far side, that means the ship's coming from the east. If it's on this side, it's coming from the west. If it's on the lower one, it means it's been reported. If it's on the upper one, it means it's been sighted. And so reported means it's coming in within the next 2 hours. Sighted means it'll be here within an hour. And then red pennant means that it's a brig. So a brig is a type of sailing vessel. And I'm going to be completely honest with you, I've forgotten what company that flag is. But it's a now defunct historical shipping company. And so a chart will be given out to the various merchants and other people in Halifax, and you then be able to read it. And so if you had a warehouse down on the water, you could then ready yourself that you see shipment by Cunard is coming in that day. All right, and follow me this way. Right, so I'm going to get you all to file in, but not to go past this rope here on the ground. So you can come all the way in, you can stand up as high as I am, but not on the long grass that I told you about earlier, with all the nasty, stinging plants. Although there aren't any here, actually. So, we do come to the last stop on the tour, but it is an exciting stop. And so we're going to spend the next 15 minutes or so here waiting for the noon gun to go off. And so as we do that, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it. So the area in front of me is a security zone. So essentially we shut that down every day for the firing of the noon gun. Just because of, we do have large amounts of explosives in the area. We obviously don't want people to be messing about with those. On top of that, we shut down the area downrange. So if you're driving around the ring road to come up to the Citadel, and it's 11:55, well, you're out of luck, especially if you're late, because we'll stop cars, we'll stop people, no one can come through. So behind me are our two primary signaling guns, and so there are a number of guns in the fort that still work, and those are two of them, but essentially all of the big cannons that you've seen today, for the most part, they all still technically work, but if you fired it, you can only fire it once because it would probably blow up in your face. So these guns have been sitting here for more than 150, 200 years. Rust and weather have essentially what made them useless. But these two are actually modern reproductions. Well, when I say modern, they were made in the 1970s, but they have a steel inner tube, which then allows us to fire them every single day. The idea of firing a cannon every day stems from needing to tell people what the time was. So we fire that cannon, so it's the further one, not the closer one, every single day at 12 o'clock, and it's fired every single day of the year except Christmas. And that is a tradition that's been going on pretty much non-stop since about 1850. So it's one of the longest standing traditions here in Halifax, and like I said, it stems from needing to tell people what the time was. So soldiers have to be on time. It's a well-known thing that soldiers are expected to be on time, if not early, to everything they do. So within a fort, you would have used musical instruments as a way to actually tell troops the time. So back in the 1850s, the average soldier could not afford a pocket watch. That was reserved exclusively for the wealthy, but they still needed to know the time. And so they would have used drum calls, and for Scottish regiments, they would have actually used bagpipes to tell them the time. So you would have had a piping call at 11, at 12, at 1, at 2, and then maybe a drum call at 11:30, 11:45. So every 15 minutes you would have actually had someone playing the drum so that you knew exactly what the time was. But troops could be out in the city. They could be even on leave. They could be doing various duties and such. And so to actually let them know what the time was, you couldn't just use a set of drums in the middle of the parade square. You're not going to hear that if you're down on Barrington Street. So you use something called a signalling gun. Now, a signalling gun is essentially just a cannon that you're firing, but without the ball flying out at the end. So you're just firing a blank charge. And so they would have fired one of those 3 times each day. So once at noon, once again at 5 p.m. and again at 8 or 9:30 in the evening, just to let you know that you had half an hour until curfew, so when soldiers had to be back to barracks. But it also functioned as a way to let ship captains know what the time was. So ships, if you're going to navigate across the Atlantic, you have to know exactly what time you left to actually figure out where you were on a map and how far you'd come, so that you weren't, sailing to Newfoundland rather than sailing to, England. Scotland. Good question. So the building in the centre, that could accommodate about 350 people fairly comfortably. Now you could have had about 400 in the fort total, and about 500 less comfortably, but around about 350, 400 at any given time, and you had a couple thousand garrisons throughout the city. Now this number would fluctuate, right, depending on if there's a conflict or not. So in the War of 1812, if there's any other conflicts in the area, that number would have rose to thousands, tens of thousands even. So nowadays we fire 1 pound of black powder. Now that black powder explosive charge, you can just see it's in the little leather pouch that they've brought up. So what you're seeing now is they're going to search the gun. So what that means is they're going to make sure there's no debris on the inside. Some child doesn't come along and put a Coke can on the inside that we're then going to launch at people of Halifax having their lunch. I did say there is no cannonball on the inside, but if you stand in front of one of those guns when it goes off, you're going to find yourself thrown in several hundred different pieces across the front of the fort. So they're still very, very dangerous, even though there's actually no powder charge on the gun. And she'll then be waiting for the fire command. And upon hearing fire, she's just going to rotate it, put the burning bit of rope into contact with the quill, and hopefully it'll go bang. Fire!
Marvelous job. So Citadel Hill was founded in 1749 and declared a historic site in 1952. And it was actually originally named Fort George after King George III. And yeah, like I said at the beginning of the video, it was built for defense of Halifax. and Halifax was never attacked, probably because of it, because it was built so well. I'll check out upstairs here. Army Museum. Hey, how's it going? It's pretty neat, little touch screen thing here. Battle of Vimy Ridge. I got a little coffee bar, a little cafe here. Pretty cool. Take a little peek in here.
Vous avez des questions?
Warden of the North. Must be where Jon Snow is.
The walls of our castle are covered stone. The stone walls protect us from showers of arrows and spears. From the top are great walls, smooth walls, and towers. Even before the spears, shoot arrows, throw objects.
Lots of barrels. Oh, that's really dark. Okay, I can't see anything here. Yeah, it's really dark. I think I was just gonna turn on my flash here, see if that helps. That's really dark. Not creepy at all. Oh, it comes to a dead end. This is pretty neat. This is like, yeah, kind of all around the fort, like a way to get around inside here. Pretty cool. Another dead end.
Hi there.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad.
This is our signal post. This is where we keep all of the flags that we fly up on our commercial signal mast right up there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so we have all the flags for all these different merchant companies that were based in Halifax in the 19th century. Keep them in there and fly them up on there to show signals of what kind of merchant ships might have been coming in.
Right, yeah, I took that tour a little earlier, buddy. He was talking about, like, yeah, the different signals and...
You can come inside and check out the signal post if you'd like.
Okay.
Take a look.
Just have a whole bunch of flags.
Oh, yeah.
And over here it's the chart for understanding.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because
So
they're really old.
all the company flags here.
Okay.
What the different pennants mean. and then on the side, like discs. So if there's 10 or more ships, a large disc, small disc, and a red flag.
Oh, okay.
And so depending on the number of ships, different ones of those.
Very cool.
So this kind of tells you how to understand what's on the signal mast. So up here is a pennant. So like if it's that one, it means a schooner. If it's like right now, it's brig, so it's that pennant. That tells you the type of ship.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then
yeah,
these flags tell you what company it is. Like if
Right.
it's like we're gonna put up the JM Weston and Co flag, which is gonna look just like that.
Okay.
And then it's also, so we're about to put up one JM Weston and Co schooner sighted in the west.
Huh.
So we're gonna put up the schooner flag, the JM Weston and Co flag, and if you look here, schooner sighted means no discs, so we're not gonna put up any discs.
Okay.
Versus right now it's one brig, so it looks more like that.
Okay.
So it's that. It's sighted in the west, so it's just one small disc on the outer yard. Is that part of the yard?
Nice.
So it just tells you how to break down it all, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really cool.
And so this is identical to the ones that they would have sold in 1871.
Yeah, and even that one looks fairly old too. Like,
Yeah.
probably not from them, but I mean, it does look like it's.
Yeah,
been around
this
for a
one's
while.
not original. It's reproductions. We have.
Yeah.
I believe they're selling the gift shop as well.
Okay. Yeah.
So that might be a cool thing to own if you live in Halifax. Just and you can see it
Yeah.
close to your house, you can just figure out what it is every day.
Yeah.
That would actually be really cool to own if you lived here.
So they actually do change the flags,
Yeah,
like for
so-
ships that come in nowadays.
Most of these companies don't exist anymore,
right.
but the Cunard company still exists.
Okay.
They're ship makers now. So every time the Queen Mary comes into the harbor, we raise the Cunard flag.
Okay.
And the contract that would have existed in the 1850s that Cunard would have signed, there was no time limit. They basically give you the flag and give you a stack of the cash. Say, okay, do this for us.
Yeah.
So technically, it didn't have a time limit. So technically, we're still honoring our contract with the Cunard company.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they have no clue that we're doing that anymore, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't think they particularly care. But we know we're honoring the contract.
Yeah,
so.
exactly. It's
So,
one
but
of
other
the.
than that, it's basically whatever they think is going to look good for that any given. They're just,
Okay.
what do we want to raise today?
Neat.
So it's not quite as, unless it's Cunard.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Cunard flag whenever Queen Mary comes in, or any Cunard ship. But
Very cool.
other than that, it's just whatever we feel like.
Awesome. Well, you guys have a good day.
You too.
All right, take care.
Take care.
Yeah, see ya. Nice hat you got there.
de ces forts permet de conserver le lien direct entre l'histoire et la vie de tous les jours.
And this is when they did repairs. They labeled all the bricks and rebuilt them exactly how they were.
Ces objets représentent qui nous racontent.
Pretty neat.
Et si ces pierres pouvaient parler, elles en
Alright guys, well that's gonna wrap this one up for today. So hope you enjoyed. Hit that like button, subscribe if you don't mind, and yeah, probably gonna cut this one out here. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you in the future.